Just out of curiosity, I would like to ask this. Has anyone ever challenged you for something? This is not grace, this is not consciousness, this is not spirituality, this is clearly science.
Usually the response we get is not, this is something that science does. It's usually that's not possible. We've had scientists that hesitate to even publish this research because they're afraid they'll be blacklisted by other scientists because the results are so significant that they're like, we don't believe that's possible. Disregarding what the data says, they're like, simply, we don't believe that you can do this way, that this is possible.
Why is there always a conflict between science, spirituality, and religion?
There was a distinct point in history where science and religion separated from each other because they weren't always separate. And that was around the time of Galileo was the most significant separation. And what ended up happening is, right, when we go into religion and spirituality and its history, right, religion and spirituality has never been able to properly take whatever it claims to be, like the tricks, the dogma, the practices, whatever that religion says can change your destiny, that can make God, have mercy on you and through the grace of God, will transform your life if you pray in this way or if you conduct this or do this specifically. Religion has never properly taken that, put it into a scientific setting and validated it, nor has it even tried to do it on non-living materials or other living organisms aside from humans.
So it has always been abstract.
Right. It's always been limited to testimonial, to faith-based. So because of its inability to do that, either it's tried and failed or it just avoids doing it altogether.
Nobody basically maybe tried giving it a scientific backing or a logical backing.
Now, there have been some people who have tried but not have delivered the kind of outcomes that science needs to truly validate that kind of reality. So the outcome either isn't there from those particular tested, rituals and dogmas, or, maybe they're afraid to try them because they're not sure. And so they've limited them, or they think there are too many variabilities in the human experience. So they're not sure, they can't make a promise and truly fulfill the promise or commit to it. So we can't say why religion has done it. We just know that it hasn't. It hasn't properly validated, right, what it says to be true. And so as a result, it's shamelessly, unfortunately to say, limited itself to a faith-based institution. And because it's limited itself to a faith-based institution, science can't do anything about it. Science needs viscosity. Science needs weight. Science needs, tangible things that it can grip, that it can weigh, that it can measure, that it can see and feel. If there's something you can see but can't measure, even science, doesn't know what to do about that. And so science has disregarded any outcomes that come from spirituality and religion as simply, faith-based anecdotes of belief systems but at the same time, it's, science has found itself limited in a lot of its ability to, address our basic problems today. But the real thing that happened and why we've pulled away from religion is because science, like I said, has provided so much for us. It's given us so much. It's advanced our science, our technology, our medicine. It's given us, antibiotics, surgeries, things. It has far exceeded what a lot of people would say religion has done for them.
But there is one concept in which even science approves, that is the concept of energies, frequency.
Right.
Is it not the same thing? Belief, blessings, all these things, are these not, or consciousness, is it not an energy?
You could say it's the fundamental energy of existence. Yeah. Science believes in energy, but it has not, identified consciousness because it can't measure it, and it can't, measure its intensity, the levels of consciousness.
Quantum
it doesn't
physics
have a
is
way.
all about that. Quantum physics does,
but it's
exactly
not a predominant scientific belief, so there's not enough scientific evidence, and there's issues with quantum physics. There's lack of repeatability. There's lack of hardcore, mainstream scientific evidence. So you have like double slit experiments and things like that, kind of vaguely, it's kind of like, oh yeah, that's really cool. cool. It suggests that when you observe something, it changes that reality. But you also see issues with repeatability, and hardcore mainstream science is like material science, right? Changing a material, right? Creating greater yield in agriculture, right? Creating, crops and increasing nutritional value. All these things science can easily measure and identify a cause and effect. But when it comes to quantum physics, there's a lot of problems. That's why it's still theoretical. Nobody has taken quantum physics and said, this is the new scientific understanding of our world. And we've proven, actually, our work supports the foundational research of quantum physics. It gives the evidence and credibility behind it because we've proven things like, the concept of quantum entanglement, which shows that at a distance, two things that are unassociated with each other, one can have an effect on the other thing, right? They're somehow entangled with each other.
That's where frequencies come into the picture.
We've demonstrated that with these divine blessings, with our clinical trials. And a lot of our experiments have been conducted remotely, not even in person, even, the agriculture experiments and even some material science. A lot of that is even remote too. And we've shown that, the blessing from one side of the world to the other side of the world, through the blessing, the intention of this person here, we're able to entangle and cause an effect over there on the other side of the world. Energy doesn't work like that. Science says energy moves and behaves in a very specific way, right? There's something called energy decay, where over time and space, energy decays. It gets weaker. If I'm transmitting an energy from the United States to India, eventually over time, that energy will decay and get weaker. And by the time it hits India, it'll have no effect, or it probably won't even hit India. And we've seen that the energy, this consciousness energy or grace of God, is more potent or equally potent, even remotely, as if you were receiving a blessing in person. So it's more than what science has claimed to be an energy phenomenon. This is something that I would say supersedes that or goes beyond that. Science might agree that consciousness is real, but the issue is what part in the system consciousness takes place, whether it comes before or after. Science strongly believes that consciousness is a byproduct of the brain still, because it considers everything a material reality. That's what happened with the division of religion and science is, science became materialistic and started ignoring the spiritual side of life, the things that we feel and experience, but can't really, put into a scientific theory. And so it's limited everything to materialism. And because of this, and considering everything a material or chemical reality, we're not able to effectively address the most pressing problems we have today. And the pressing problems are our mental health crises. By affecting things at the level of consciousness, I've told you in our clinical trials, we've resolved 100% everybody's mental and emotional health crises. There is no treatment out there that's universally applicable to everybody that can resolve everybody's mental health crises. Just by applying consciousness, it doesn't matter who it is. It targets everyone uniquely and intelligently to address your mental health. And at the same time, when we apply it to agriculture, science is dependent upon toxic chemicals, right? Fungicide, weedicide, chemical fertilizers to produce, good quality crop production. And even then, it doesn't produce quality, just quantity. Without these toxic chemicals, it can't produce the number of crops it needs to feed the world and our nations. Right? It's struggling to do that. If our crops fail, we don't even have enough food on reserve to, feed all of humanity for more than maybe a week or so. So our world is so dependent upon toxic chemicals, and that affects our environment, our soil, our groundwater. It affects the air we breathe, everything. It reduces our quality of life. And science is dependent. It doesn't have another option. Now, if you look at this as something that consciousness can address, suddenly we have a solution. With our experiments with agriculture, we've blessed, seeds, we've blessed soil, fruits, nuts, trees, plants. We've seen changes in the bacterial composition of the soil. We've seen, improvements by several hundreds of percentages in the good beneficial bacteria in the soil and huge decreases in the negative, harmful bacteria in the soil. We've seen crop yield increase by as much as 600%. We've seen double shelf life in cashews. We've seen immunity increase. We've seen chlorophyll levels increase. We've seen, vitamin A, beta carotene, qualitative increases in agriculture that science is incapable of doing. Science has no answer. It has no ability to do this. And this is without the use of any toxic chemicals, not even organic ones. It's literally just the soil, the crop, right? This blessing, the sun, that's it.
Dahryn, when blessings can do so much, then why can't we bring it to use in cases of natural calamities or things like COVID or national wars? Why don't we bring the superpower into use during those times?
I do agree this is a consciousness-based issue, but at the same thing, there is a journey that life needs to go through and progress through, right? In order to learn what we need to learn, in order to even become, moral and good ethical people, sometimes people need to suffer, unfortunately. Sometimes people need to experience calamity. Sometimes these things need to happen. Now, yes, is this capable of fixing those things? I strongly believe it could be. But the thing is, you have to also deal with people that are ready for it, right? You don't just bless somebody who's undeserving, who doesn't want it, and who's ready to, use that blessing for the adverse. If you get a blessing and you grow as a result of it and you use it to harm other people, right? There's so many factors to consider and all of that. You can't just do one universal blessing and get rid of all the problems. Life doesn't work like that.
How do you decide whether this thing deserves a blessing or not, or whether this person deserves a blessing or not?
I would probably say that divine knows. The strongest indicator of your right receptivity to the blessing is your purity and innocence. If you're pure and innocent, if you're surrendered to the divine, all of that, you'll reap all the benefits. Okay. If you're full of ego and arrogance, you could probably get I haven't seen a case where people haven't had an impact. I've seen cases where people have had short-term benefits versus complete long-term permanent transformation. And the people who get short-term benefits, they just keep getting more blessings, right? Without changing their character, they get the mental peace and all of those things, but they don't transform, not permanently. And that's because they don't have that inherent purity at heart. They don't try and transform. And transformation is essential. It's mandatory for human life. That's our whole nature, is transformation. That's what consciousness does, is it transforms. So it definitely helps on our process of transformation and our progression, but it's between you and God. And I mean, it's not really up to me what that person will get from God. So I like to say all the blessings that we do is simply a prayer request to the divine, and the divine is the one that answers the prayer, right? The divine knows what to bring into your life. If the divine feels that, you might use this inappropriately in the wrong direction, maybe divine won't support you in that direction, but the divine will support you in all the other directions that will be for your greatest good and happiness.
Since you're a believer of God, I would like to ask you this. You said that if somebody is not pure enough from their heart, that person will not get the blessings as much as other people can get. Now, the purity of someone, what kind of intentions they carry, is it not defined or is it not destined already? How can we say that their actions or their intentions are in their control?
Purity doesn't mean you will get a blessing or you won't, right? You'll still get the blessing. Purity can make you a better conductor. It can give you more of an outcome. Yes, that's true. But also what the blessing can do is it can help make you pure.
Okay.
It can, if you're sincere, if you're actually seeking growth, you could be full of bad characters and come to us. It's like all the people that have come to Enlightened Masters, they're full of people who have, supposed sinners and people who have, led horrible lives. And they've been the ones that have transformed the most sometimes.
In fact, there are so many studies which are done on the prisoners in jail. And whenever there is an educational program given to them, there's a huge improvement in their behavior and they're less likely to return back to crime.
Right. So, there's a certain level of sincerity that is involved, but I strongly believe this energy of consciousness, right? It facilitates that change from, something not so pure into something pure. But ultimately, God is the one that transforms our characters. It's not something that we can do through any behavior on our part. Like I said, consciousness is what determines our state of mind, not the other way around. So if you beseech God and you're sincere, God can make you pure. God can do anything. God has no limitations as to what God can do. So who knows what the results could be for anyone. But I will say that I have not seen a single case where nobody has had any kind of significant significant results. Everybody, no matter their level of consciousness or level of transformation, has received something absolutely unprecedented or significant or miraculous from these blessings. And so, I don't feel like it's limited to only the pure, but definitely the pure can harness and receive a lot more from it.
Yeah. But at the same time, you said that even consciousness can impact basic things like the quality of your sleep or cognitive power or your motor skills.
Yes.
So how can consciousness help in enhancing all these things? Basically enhancing the quality of life in general.
Like I told you, it has this inherent intelligence that knows what to do for everything, right? That's why we've been able to apply the same blessing to everything. And it has unique outcomes for that recipient, whatever it be. It knows what to do. Well, what does that mean? Let's look at that in terms of sleep. When we're dealing with good quality sleep, what prevents us from sleeping well?
Stress, tension, overthinking.
Right. Usually our state of mind, it's constant mental restlessness. Everybody has unique problems and unique people around them, right? And so there's this constant mental activity and mental communication going on. There's always something that the mind is processing. And we like to think that the mind stops working when we go to sleep. No, it continues to work. Right. The mind never shuts off. And scientists have proven this, right? That's why sometimes you go to sleep, trying to think of a math problem, the answer to it, and you're too tired. You can't think of it. You take a nap, you wake up and suddenly the answer just comes to you because your brain was working on the solution while you were unconscious in sleep, right? So the mind, until things are resolved, right, or in a state of complete chaos, right, the mind doesn't know what to do with all this information, with all these thoughts. It doesn't know how to calm things down, how to integrate or organize everything from lower states of consciousness. The mind is chaotic. It's disheveled. It doesn't know what to do. So in the same way, like if your mind is organized, if your mind is in a calm state, it's not disheveled, everything's integrating properly, that's the effect, the expression of higher consciousness, which means our ability to handle stress, our ability to manage stress is heightened. It doesn't affect us negatively anymore. And in fact, right, there's a difference between good stress and bad stress. Well, in reality, it's not really good stress and bad stress. It's how our mind operates with stress. Right. So in a state of dishevel, our mind takes on stress as a negative part, which leads to poor sleep, mental restlessness, right? The mind can never truly enter into a state of calmness. Calmness is essential for good quality sleep. Good quality sleep leads to the body operating properly, right? The good quality sleep leads to housekeeping in the brain. It clears away, organizes our minds, clears away old memories, right? It helps reduce our inflammation. It helps integrate the mind-body connection. It reduces, all these problems. It helps maintain our cognitive abilities. When you have huge stress, you have higher inflammation, chronic inflammation, right? Yeah. Stress is the killer of life quality. It destroys quality of life. And it's probably the root cause of all the mental disorders that we see today, mental health problems. And so when you have higher consciousness, you're able to enter into that state of calmness because, like I said, consciousness creates your state of mind. It is the expression of your state of mind. So your natural state in higher consciousness is calmness. You don't have to maintain it or create calmness. Calmness is natural to you in higher states of consciousness. Consciousness is the thing that links God with matter. Religion believes God is real, but doesn't know how God interacts with the world, how God created the world just through God's grace. But how did this come to be? How is all of this working? So when you put it all together, and that's exactly what we've done with all of our scientific research, is we've established that missing link between God, consciousness, and matter. We've established that missing link. We've made this comprehensive understanding of existence, which is capable of answering all these problems, this full spectrum of human experience that we're struggling to address and face now, has one solution. Our research, it's conducted with third-party institutions all over the world. It's not like us doing it in our backyard. We're using the most sophisticated technologies available, the ones that even NASA uses. We're using all the standard protocol and measures that science uses today to conduct all of their experiments.
Amazing.
Using the same protocols, the same techniques, the same materials and methods, and we're doing everything the correct way. And so over time, there's only one thing that science can do eventually, eventually. And that is to accept this consciousness as the fundamental reality.
At least I have never heard of this before. I mean, clinical trials done on consciousness or spiritual beliefs and actions. So this is absolutely new.
From my knowledge of all the experiments and research that's out there, nobody has done this. Most scientists will have 10 publications in their lifetime. We have over 670 on our science experiments, as well as 6,000 science experiments, right? This is available in over 3,000 universities in over 100 countries. One clinical trial that we've done, right? We've tested the psychological assessments. We've done the NIH toolbox. Well, we've also done even blood assessments. We've taken samples in blood. We've measured neurotransmitters, hormones, vitamin and nutrient absorption, insulin resistance, right? We've measured things that even psychology has no proven effect over across all the data that we've conducted research on. All science data has shown that these things are even notoriously hard to have influence over by even the most, accepted and capable methods and treatments out there. That we're not able to have influence over some of these parameters. We're seeing inflammation go down, which the closest we've come to that is by severe biologic therapies, right, which are very aggressive in nature and have a huge amount of risks and side effects. And it's usually for people with huge immune problems, severe cancer, really severe health problems. That's only when we resort to those types of therapies to try and reduce that kind of inflammation and create those kinds of, immune pathways within the body, because it comes with a huge host of side effects, right? We've seen similar and even more anti-inflammatory outcomes from the blessing than from those treatments without the side effects.
In a nutshell, how would you define a blessing? Is it psychological? Is it spiritual?
It's a prayer to the divine from enlightened states of consciousness.
Do you mean energy?
Basically, it's the intention. You can enter into complete silence of the mind, mental stillness. In this state, this is enlightenment. When you have that ability to do that, when you can command and control your thoughts instead of them controlling you, that is the true indicator of enlightenment. When you can suspend thought entirely. And so from that place, right, you enter into a new state of consciousness, which is a divine. And from that place, your intention, right, for the recipient, right, to be blessed, for the grace of God, for more consciousness to be here. And then whatever happens, the outcome is between you and God and the evolution of consciousness within you.
When you're asked to, or when you wish to bless somebody or give your blessings to somebody, what exactly do you do?
So we call that a trance-like state, but other terms is like maybe samadhi, if you want to call it that. But I like to just say you enter into that thoughtlessness, you connect with the divine, and then you just pray. You pray to the divine for the best outcome for that thing. You say, God, raise the consciousness of this material, or God, raise the consciousness of this crop. I always say, God, you know what to do. I don't know what to do here. You know what to do. You deliver the outcome. God always delivers.
And you can literally address thousands of individuals remotely.
Yes. We've done it over the phone. We've done it, over Zoom calls. We've done it with our clinical trials. We've done it with materials and other experiments. We're able to do anything remotely or in person. There's no limit on how many that can be blessed or the distance required or any of those things.
Tell me something, Dahryn. In my experience or in my knowledge, we have always heard of or thought of or seen or listened about, read about people who have this divine power of giving blessings to be saints, to be either, monk-like or somebody who's, sitting in the Himalayas in a specific attire, very, very away from this world, this practical world and this materialistic world. But you are none of them.
You can tell.
So, yeah, exactly.
Face full of makeup, hair done, wearing a suit, sitting across from you on a podcast recorded through technology. I'm not an aesthetic by any means.
Yes, all of that.
I'm married.
Married, yes. So how do you balance these two sides of yours? One is the practical, social, material life, and then the spiritual somebody who has a direct connection with God, as I would like to call it, don't you ever feel drawn towards one, especially materialistic things like money or ego or comparisons?
I honestly don't see that there's any difference. I feel like everything is spiritual. I feel like everything has God in it. I don't feel like there's anything that doesn't. Like, come to the core of what consciousness is fundamental reality. God is everywhere. God is in all things. You know, how is wearing a robe and not, you know, being an aesthetic any different from, you know, wearing a suit and being married? It's like God exists in both.
I totally agree to what you're saying.
Yes.
You can still be connected to God no matter what you're doing. You don't have to be a saint and go to Himalayas to practice that. I totally agree with that. But I'm trying to ask, don't you face or feel any distractions? Don't you think that being a part of this social, practical, competitive world distracts you from your purpose or maybe affects your energy?
No effect. It's like saying coloring your hair can create a change at the level of your DNA and permanently alter how the hair comes out from your head, right? It's like we're assuming that these things have an effect on consciousness, right? That's kind of where that true origin of the reason why I'm saying has no effect comes from. Because if consciousness is really what brings peace, what brings that stillness, and what brings that connection to divine in everything you do, what brings that confidence without comparison, and what brings that vitality in your life, what brings that just connection to God really in everything you do, right? It's like there's no concern about those things because you're already at that peak. You're already at that place. And so none of these things can have an effect on that, can take away from that. None of these things can bring that away.
Yeah.
It's like I had a really funny experience when I first married Guruji, my husband. He was with a bunch of people and some of them are meeting him for the first time. And he was, you know, because there's sometimes a little bit of nurturing you have to do because there's a lot of, you know, stigma and a lot of superstition and a lot of, you know, belief and repeated misinformation about what God is and, you know, what it means to be spiritual and all those things. And so during one of those meetings, right, he opened a can of Coke and started drinking out of it. And one person had a horrible reaction because they're like, you know, aren't you worried about how that'll affect your consciousness? The other person was like, you know, I don't believe an enlightened being can be drinking Coke or they would even want to. And he was like, well, if you're worried about this can of Coke, if you think that has the ability to change my consciousness or affect my enlightenment, then maybe you should be praying to this can of Coke and not to God.
So does that mean the level of your consciousness cannot be affected by what you eat, what you wear, and even what you think?
No, you cannot alter consciousness by anything.
Can a bad person have high level of consciousness?
I think that's contradictory. I don't think a bad person has high consciousness. So that's an emanation and expression of lower consciousness is being a bad person.
And does anyone have to be religious or spiritual in order to follow this?
No.
It doesn't matter.
Like I told you, you know, my personal assistant, right? She, you know, didn't believe in God before, right? Still had incredible outcomes that are permanent to this day, right? She hasn't gone back or regressed. We have people from all different kinds of religions, from all different belief systems. In fact, we've actually seen what this energy, this blessing can do is it can help strengthen your faith. It helps people with their religion or their spiritual path. It makes people either believe in God when they didn't, like my assistant. It makes people, you know, have stronger. We've had people, you know, like from Christianity who stopped going to church and, you know, were still believed in God and all of that, but they weren't as, you know, devout anymore, who after getting the blessing and getting these huge benefits, they started going to church again. They started, you know, following that path. And so that's okay. Everybody can conduct their lives however they choose. You know, it strengthens your connection to God, not pushes you away.
Any practical steps to increase the consciousness? Any 1, 2, 3 steps that you can tell? So you said purity and all these things, but exactly how? What would be the first step? Can you define it in words?
It's just a state of ultimate receptivity. It's a state of gratitude and love for God. It's a state of trust, right? That kind of purity and innocence. Some people, it comes more natural to others. But ultimately, if people are struggling to reach that, right, that is the best receiver for this energy. But like I said, not the only requirement. Because what this energy, these blessings can do is they can make you more pure. They can transform you. They can make you innocent. So if the intention and the good intentions, that's when good intentions might matter, right?
Yeah.
So if the good intentions and the sincerity is there, as well as the discipline to become that.
Okay, so there is no reverse plan to enlightenment.
There's no reverse plan to enlightenment.
Okay. How's somebody who is enlightened different than a life coach or a spiritual leader per se?
I would say it's a difference between theoretical and outcome.
Okay.
So a lot of life coaches, transformational leaders, right? They have a lot of good ideas.
Yeah.
And I believe a lot of them have good intentions. But unfortunately, a lot of what they have as outcome is, and this happens with a lot of them, is they'll take a few success stories or a few success cases and use that as an example for their teachings instead of the actual validation and outcome of science. And so I truly believe that in order to prevent scam artists and people who don't have good intentions, to prevent the amount of pseudoscience that's so prevalent in the wellness industry and personal development industries, right? To prevent harmful practices, because a lot of practices, they might just waste your time and money, but there are also ones that damage you. And so because science, a lot of this is limited to faith and belief, and science can't touch it, right? Science is void from being able to have an effect on it. Science tries to get involved, but can't measure the things that we want to emulate or create through the wellness industry, right? So science is kind of limited to what it can do there.
Yeah.
So it's like the Wild West. A lot of things run rampant. A lot of misinformation is out there. A lot of people think practices do things that don't do anything or in fact are harmful. So I really feel like the integrity of science is essential. It's mandatory if we want to truly allow real transformation and to help people in their lives. And so the real difference is the data. That's what differentiates us.
Dahryn, what do you think about destiny? Do you think that practicing consciousness or developing that level of consciousness is like altering your destiny?
Yes. I believe that evolving your consciousness transforms your destiny. A destiny of an atom, for example, in a given material, right, are its boiling points, its physical constants, right? It can't do anything beyond that. It's limited to that path.
Yeah.
Right. It's stuck on a specific trajectory and it can't do anything different from that. In the same way, it's like our level of consciousness governs our thoughts, our abilities, our ability to think clearly, to see choices and possibilities. It affects our mind-body communication, affects our physical well-being. It gives us clarity when we have higher levels of consciousness. It gives us vision of the future. It gives us greater integration power, right? Like in the clinical trials, we saw it improved people's cognition by nearly 100% in every parameter. That is a change in destiny. They're now living a different path in life than they would at their baseline. That is a new path. That is a new destiny.
So what do you think is the ultimate purpose of humans? What are we trying to achieve?
The ultimate goal is enlightenment. It's ultimate freedom
for everyone.
That's everybody's ultimate goal. Along that path, we have to find a way to sustain and live and follow our destiny, right? When we follow our destiny, like I said before, we're supported by the divine, right? Because the divine gave us that destiny and we transform, but we make an assessment of our lives. We find our likings, our dislikings, our strengths, our weaknesses. We find a path in life that utilizes all of that with complete honesty and humility as to who we are as people. We follow that. We find a life where we're not just struggling for survival, but we're able to sustain us, because when we're following our destiny, we're supported, right? So you're no longer struggling to survive. You're actually living, right? And then on top of that, right, enlightenment, there's nothing higher. There's nothing more than that. That's what all of us are here for. That's the nature of consciousness, is to evolve us until we reach that point, until consciousness becomes free.
What about those who carry emotional traumas for years and that is something which stops them from evolving. What is the solution?
So, right, emotional trauma stays with you till your death. Usually for most people, emotional trauma, and a lot of psychologists believe this, that emotional trauma never really goes away. They believe you find better ways to manage it. A lot of them truly doubt whether, especially severe cases of emotional trauma, can really be resolved effectively or completely. Right? A lot of them truly believe you live with it for the rest of your lives. At least, traces of it, there's always going to be there.
In fact, science says that your emotional patterns are formed even before you're born, while you're still in your mother's womb. So how can they really get rid of these traumas or all these characteristics which they don't want to keep with themselves?
That's what we've seen in our clinical trials, right? With the assessment, because everybody who came to us had severe mental and emotional trauma, right? Severe mental and emotional health problems. And by the end of the clinical trial, all of them were completely resolved. Every single tested, emotional or mental health issue that they had at the time was completely eradicated.
Amazing.
That's what higher consciousness does. It literally dissolves trauma. It completely, it's the only answer that can completely get rid of it entirely. And we have the science to back it up, that higher states of consciousness can actually resolve this trauma without you having to, go to therapy and do all these different things, because that's not what the volunteers of our clinical trial did. They just evolved their consciousness. And from that higher state of consciousness, from that organized, higher state of mind, right, the trauma doesn't exist there. So it just gets eradicated. It dissolves.
Those who are completely surrendered to God and they pray every day, they meditate to calm down their mind, their nervous system, their hormones, oxytocin. Even then, it's not a permanent solution.
Behavior-based, no, but that sounds like something different. So when you're talking about somebody who is in a state of that purity, right? They've surrendered to God, right? They're coming from a pure place, pure intention. Then those people would probably have a lot more outcome than somebody who's simply praying and doing pujas all the time and, just doing it because they that's what they're told that they have to do. Or somebody who's just practicing meditation, but not actually going into states of meditation, right? Things like that. There are a lot of behavior-based methods that people get stuck on and they think that they're being spiritual when in reality, that's no different from anything else.
What is the meaning of true spirituality according to you?
True spirituality is the expression of consciousness. That's what true spirituality is. Like I broke down science and religion, and spirituality is the expression of consciousness. True expression of consciousness is devotion, that love and that purity, that innocence. Those are expressions of consciousness. Those characters are reflections of what happens at a change in consciousness. Whatever connection to God that you already have, then yes, God can easily bless you. God can be there for you. God can be there for anybody who's pure and innocent and ready to change and is completely surrendered and humbled at the feet of God. I believe that's possible for anybody. This energy, this blessing definitely, can make that happen a lot faster, boost especially those people as well, those people who are sincere and they're seeking true resolution from their trauma, right? These blessings are the most effective on those kind of people.
Is there anything that you personally follow on an everyday basis or regularly to strengthen or to keep this connection alive, this connection with God? Or is it's once established, it's always there?
Once enlightenment is there, it's always there. States of mind can change, but enlightenment stays. What I can say is, morality, ethics, right? The characters that you try and discipline and follow as the divine principles and fundamentals to help evolve and transform you, right? You discipline your life in accordance with those. Those help evolve your consciousness. Well, from an enlightened state, that's your natural state, right? You don't have to try to be those things or to do those things. An enlightened being, right, their state is calmness. Calmness is the natural state of enlightenment or peace and love and bliss and empathy and caring and sacrifice. Those are inherent to enlightenment. I feel like you don't need to practice or do anything to instill those characters when you are those characters.
Okay, I have one last question.
Sure.
Blessing or being someone who can bless others, I think it's a divine thing. I think
Yes.
first you need to be blessed yourself to be able to
Right.
become someone who can bless others.
Yes.
So such pious, such pure, and such a divine thing. Why is there a price tag to it? Why is there a price tag to blessing?
So there's a price tag for multiple reasons. And there are many cases when we don't charge for blessings, right? When we feel someone is in desperate need and we truly feel that it's something that they would hugely benefit from. But when we're talking about price tag, we're talking about that multifaceted mission that we have, right? Which is a huge global scale thing that we have to do that will benefit humanity greatly. So this is not a small thing, or I'm blessing you and I'm getting money and that's all that's happening here. This is a mission. And this is a nonprofit organization. So the price tag for the blessing goes to the nonprofit. Right? That's ultimately where it goes. It goes to funding this mission. First of all, I think it's appropriate to invest in your growth, right? People are willing to pay so much more for a cell phone than for one of these blessings costs, right? And they don't feel that there's any issue with that. And I feel like there is a level of exchange that's required. I feel like for what the journey has created, what this person has gone through on their own path, their own struggle, what they've overcome and done, as a sacrifice and for this path and service to others and to this planet, I feel like it's only energetically appropriate that somebody should do something in return as opposed to just getting something for free all the time.
Yeah.
Second of all, people have more value for it.
Yeah, right.
It's very fascinating. We actually started off without charging anything for blessings at all. And people actually really took advantage of that system. And it really got out of control and they didn't have the proper value for what they were getting. It was only when we had a price tag for it that people actually, because the moment you're investing something, you're determining the worth of it in your eyes automatically. So people put a value to it now, and then they start to really pay attention to the results they're getting. All the science that we've done has cost us probably tens of millions of dollars over the last few decades that we've conducted all of this research. That's not a small amount of money, right? So, and able to even pursue this scientific research, to create this database of science, to do all of what we're doing now, it's not possible without charging something.
Right.
And
True.
I want to be completely transparent. It's our intention in the future that the moment we develop blessed food products and a bunch of other things that are be available, products that even the masses who don't know the blessings there are not, right? Once we establish all other models where we can attract, other sources of income to be able to support our mission and what we do, we actually intend to turn this nonprofit blessing-based business into, completely free of charge for people. So that's our intention for the future. But right now, it's just simply not a viable path for us in order to sustain and maintain what we do. And I feel like people are contributing to something great when we do it. So I feel like it's a good thing for them to do.
In the end, I would just like to ask that if someone listening to this conversation today feel lost or disconnected, then what would be their first step or the step to which they can take today to begin their journey towards consciousness? If there is one thing which you would like to tell the audience.
So I would say, try a blessing. Really, just try it. See, at the very least, you can understand what's possible. It gives you that shift in your mind to truly see what's available and real in the world. If you even have a taste of it just one time, sometimes that one time is enough to bring about great changes and to completely alter the trajectory of your life, so you can see that life isn't about what it was before, that life is something different, that there are other things out there. Even if you don't want to continue with the blessings, that's fine. But you'll at least get a taste of what's real, of what's possible. So if there's anything that I want people to know at the very beginning of this journey, is to know that God does love you, God does care about you, and God truly does want what's best for your greatest growth and happiness. And so if you can at least connect to that idea and know that that's true, I think that is probably one of the greatest boons I can give you just on this podcast alone, is to let you know that God is in your support and God is here for you, and you're not alone, and you are so incredibly loved, more than you'll ever know.
Beautiful, beautiful. If there are any links to the trials or the studies that you have done, I would like to drop them in the description box below.
Of course.
For those who want to learn more about it, know more about it. And if people are interested in exploring what you have to offer, we'll also love to share your website links or how they can connect with you in the description. Is that okay?
Of course. And just verbally, for anybody who's maybe not able to read the description, it's just divineconnection.org. So that's our website that has everything there. Our science studies, our research. You can connect with us there, ask questions, right? We're able to answer all of your questions. You can just stay updated with everything when we come out with blessed food products, like whatever we're going to do in the future, just stay connected. Read more about it. Everything, like I said, all of our publications and science experiments are all on our website, and they're all, Google Scholar, all these different places you can, look into us and see what we do and read the data and the results for yourself. Come to your own conclusions.
Perfect. So go explore the website for yourself and check it out. Well, thank you so much, Dahryn. It was amazing. Fantastic.
Thank you.
I am in a different zone right now. I don't know whether it's your effect or what, but I feel truly lucky to have this conversation with you. And I don't know from where to begin. I'll go figure it out and see and walk towards my journey of enlightenment. But it was amazing. Thank you so much.
I had an absolute joy, absolute pleasure spending time here with you today, discussing everything with you. So thank you for having me here.
Thank you.